Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. It's been one hell of a week, so let's round it out here. It's very interesting that in times like this, when there's a particular conflict, everybody basically digs their heels in. Not everybody, clearly, but certain fractions, I should say, of both the left and the right dig their heels in, and they're convinced that they have it all figured out. As I've said before, I don't claim to have it all figured out, but I'm not bringing emotion into the equation, which allows me to have more of an objective view and a long-term view, both with what's occurred in the past, what's occurring now, and what likely lies ahead, as opposed to the individuals, again, on both the left and the right of the so-called paradigm here, again, operating emotionally. Let me give you a quick example, just from sort of the right side, so to speak, of the political aisle. I tuned into Alex Jones the other day just for like 5 minutes again. I was driving around and running a couple of errands, and then I thought, well, okay, I'll turn him on and see what he's talking about. Without fail, he has on Nick Fuentes. And the two of them, listening to the two of them talk about geopolitical affairs, and certainly the current conflict in Iran right now, they have no idea what they're talking about. None. Zero. They are both over-emotional, and they're both clowns, in my opinion. And when you hear the two of them talk, they're speaking with such levels of certainty that it's actually embarrassing. Because, again, they don't know what they're talking about. And apparently, again, you would think that Alex Jones, of all people, I mean, Nick Fuentes is a child, by all stretches, but you would think that Alex Jones, of all people, would have some sense of history over there and what's actually been taking place, and actually interject his opinion to a Nick Fuentes and say, hey, look, kid, you haven't been alive that long. And as it turns out, here's what was going on during the entire Obama administration while you were still in college. And here's what was going on before that. And here's what was going on before that over there in the Middle East with all these previous administrations. And here's what's happening now. You would think that he would interject some common sense, but that didn't happen either. They instantly get on the hate Donald Trump bandwagon, again, as if they have everything figured out. So I would say this, first and foremost, this is complex, as I've said before, because it requires understanding the past, and then you can more understand the current circumstances and the current state of affairs. A long time ago, Iran, certainly back in the 70s, was a decent nation. There was nothing wrong with it. It was a self-sustaining nation. Its people were by and large free. They weren't oppressive. They weren't oppressed. Things were just fine. And then Israel, Mossad, the CIA, MI6, London, they all became involved in Iran, overthrew their government, and installed ayatollahs and the mullahs and all these other leaders, which again became oppressive toward their own people. And then it became, of course, a CIA playground, along with all these other intelligence agencies. They have been running children, drugs, weapons, copious amounts of money. And that's been going on, clearly, for a very, very long time. Now, you can work this equation any way you want. You can work it backwards if you'd like. Okay, you have a current conflict, and it appears that military installations are being bombed, and yes, there's collateral damage, with, of course, innocent people being killed as well. But by and large, the American strikes, and I emphasize American strikes, are the ones taking place against their military equipment. Where did they get their military equipment? They got it from China. Who paid for it? As it turns out, we did. Iran got the money from Israel. Iran got the money from previous administrations, very famously Barack Obama's administration. And you can go back even further, USAID, your tax dollars. Everybody's tax dollars in America have been funneled and run right through Israel, foreign countries, deep state players in our country, their country, England, London, specifically the banking system, all the way through again those foreign countries to perpetuate constant religious wars, quote unquote, constant conflict. And then, of course, right to China, and then right back. Just this back and forth game. So, if you want to stop a back and forth game like that, what do? You cut off all of the supply lines. Metaphorically, you kill the people on the other end of the telephone. If a John Kerry, for example, former senator, former presidential candidate, climate change activist, he's a fraud, he should be hung by the neck until dead because he's a traitor, openly engaged, of course, back in the day of the overthrow of Donald Trump, the entire coup. He was a player in all of that also. The whole Russiagate thing, he was involved. And he was running a shadow government with Barack Obama and Valerie Jarrett and the rest of these individuals. Valerie Jarrett, by the way, is Iranian. Not an accident. Her parents are Iranian. But all of that was transpiring and all of that was taking place while Donald Trump himself was in office the first time. So the easiest way, again, to stop playing the game of telephone is you kill the person on the other end of the line. That way, if a John Kerry picks up a telephone and tries to call somebody over in Iran, whoops, there's nobody on the other end of the line. If Barack Obama tries to do the same thing, whoops-a-daisy, there's no one on the other end of the line because the person that you were operating with that is over there within their own deep state is no longer alive. They're either dead or they're on the run. This is what's taking place over there right now. They're killing deep state players. They're cutting off supply chains. They're cutting off communication routes. They're doing all of this because the real world war that's taking place has been one that's been going on since God knows how long, since forever. You could theoretically say that World War III started when Donald Trump came down the escalator. That far back. That's when the deep state panicked. It's when they tried to kill him. It's when 1,000 things occurred. And again, this business of the whole Zion Don stuff, he's playing all sides. He's playing everybody against one another. Because you know the way that the Israeli government consistently behaves. I mean, you're well aware. Lots of people are. They openly always play the victim. And when someone comes to their rescue, even though they're really not coming to their rescue, they have to make it look like somebody's coming to their rescue. And then they'll give credit to the very people who are actually the ones putting them down. This is how psychotic they are. But anytime that Israel throws Donald Trump a compliment, Donald Trump knows what he's doing to them, and they know what he's doing to them. And they don't like it either. They don't like that Donald Trump is cutting off supply chains and supply lines. They can't stand it. Certainly their government can't stand it. Again, they wanted a full-blown, massive bomb war with Iran on a constant basis and go through the entire country and then, of course, take it over for themselves. But that's not happening, and that's not going to happen. This is exactly why Donald Trump has individuals in the surrounding countries going into Iran. Like the Kurds in Iraq, for example. They're being funded by us. They're being equipped by us, but they're the ones that are going in on the ground. It's not our soldiers per se. It's them. That's not a bad thing. It's also why, dating back to even the Q posts, back in 2018, all those years ago, that Donald Trump was openly telling them that they need to stand up for themselves as Iranian people against their own government. Again, he's advocating for, and the United States military was advocating for the Iranian people to stand up against their own government. A time will come where we will be there, we'll be able to help you, and we'll give you the leverage in order to do that. Because again, once that happens, then they're not oppressed anymore. Then, of course, they can have their own government, hopefully. I personally don't like and wouldn't like anybody with any Israeli affiliation to take over Iran. I mean, I wouldn't be interested in that, but then again, I don't live there. That's not my call to make. Just like it isn't anybody's call to make, theoretically. Which leads me to this, again, just kind of as a societal observation. There's a cartoon that I put out on X and Gab, and it's a stereotypical liberal female she's got all the garb all over her shirt and bag and everything, BLM, rainbow flag, she's got pink hair, the whole thing. And she's sticking her hand in front of the mouth of an Iranian female. And the left winger is saying, no, 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 let me tell you why Trump freeing you from a dictatorship was bad. I know more than you or your lived experience. Now, what's funny is it's depicting a liberal female doing this to an Iranian female. We know that hypocrisy already exists. What's interesting and funny, and not really, because these people expose themselves as being remarkably stupid, is that people on the right are also behaving the exact same way as the female liberal in this cartoon. They too are saying, no, 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 let me tell you why Trump freeing you from a dictatorship was bad. I know you more than you or your lived experience. I know more than you do, basically. People on the right are doing the exact same thing. It's all over social media. It's everywhere. Donald Trump's being led around by Israel and the Jews, and he's being told to do all of this, and he's their puppet. See, I told you. That's what people on the right are saying, like the Nick Fuenteses of the world. They're both wrong. It's not just one-dimensional thinking. It's worse than that. It's individuals who have no grasp of real history. They don't want to know about real history. And they're so jaded that they believe, again, that every conflict is brought about by Israeli pressure. What this war is doing, and it is a battle in a war, again, it's not World War III because, again, joke's on everybody, we've already been in it. It's already been going on. And in any war, you have information, you have great awakenings, you have revelations that are being told, you have information dissemination, you have psychological operations, both good and bad, and then you have physical conflict. You have physical conflict domestically, you have people get killed domestically here in our own homeland, you have judicial, whatever you would want to call it, outrageousness, among other words, I guess. You have judicial carelessness, you have law enforcement carelessness, you have all these institutions behaving insanely, like the American schooling system, universities, you name it, protests. You have all of that in a war because we're in a war. But it didn't start a couple of days ago when a couple of bombs dropped on Iran. That's just a physical battle in a war. It's just happening overseas. And then, of course, like I said earlier, a person has to ask themselves the question, why? Why is it that battle is taking place there? Again, the low-level thinking, hard right-wingers, so to speak, would be like, whatever, it's because of the Jews. And they're making us do this, and we don't belong over there, and Americans have already been killed, and this, that, and the other. It's more complex than that. That's not the answer. This is actually a battle in Iran right now that's being conducted in a much larger war to end wars. That's the point. It's to take away the other person on the other end of the telephone that Israel was calling to create wars. The Muslim Brotherhood, Hezbollah, pick any of those organizations. They're all funded by London and Israel. Which, again, work that problem backwards. Your tax dollars, our tax dollars. Why do you think USAID was shut down? That's a supply chain. That's a supply line. And now it's not there. And look at all of the people who panicked about that. People on the left and the right panicked about it. People who love Israel panicked about it. They didn't like it either. They hated it. But the Trump administration was moving so fast that something else would come down the pipeline that would garner their attention, and then they'd be like, oh, okay, whatever, I'm on to this now. The supply lines are being cut off. All of the telephones and communication lines are being cut off one at a time. And again, in any war or in any battle within a war, thinking is in short supply because you have people being over emotional. And as I've brought up on the show, it's physiologically not near impossible. It's close to impossible, but it's physiologically difficult, if not downright impossible, for a person to think clearly with their frontal cortex of their brain when their emotions are high, because they rely on the amygdala, one of the smaller parts of the brain, which regulates emotion. That's the part that's getting people upset because, again, they're not thinking. It hijacks the frontal cortex. They can't think clearly, so what do? They throw memes around. I'm not dying for Israel. I'm not going to die for Israel again. No more Israel wars. I'm not fighting for Israel. Good. Because you're not the only one who understands that that's the point here. In fact, those people putting out those memes don't understand what's going on. What's going on is, again, I'm being repetitive, but it's on purpose, is that this is designed to stop Israel from doing things like this ever again. Because with Iran the way that it was, they were an Israeli playground. They were a deep state playground. Israel loved the fact that Iran was getting tens of billions, hundreds of billions of dollars from the Obama administration. And Valerie Jarrett, Iranian. They loved that. Loved it. Because what were they doing with that money? They were buying it. They were buying weapons, rather, from both China and Israel. Well, who gives Israel weapons? We do. Which means it's money laundering. Israel doesn't make anything. They have nothing. All they have over there are shekels and sand. That's it. They have no imports, exports. They produce nothing. And whatever they produce, if they think they produce something other than degeneracy, pornography, and satanic behavior, that exists everywhere, which is unfortunate, but they have nothing. So again, if you can isolate them on their little sandbox island, as far as Israel is concerned anyway, then that's a good thing. Keeping Israel right where they are is a good thing. Allowing Israel to expand is a bad thing. Which again, as I've always said, and it's still true, is that making sure that the people who, again, are implanted within these particular areas, within these particular countries, to run these particular countries in the future, that they do not have ties with Israel. Because again, Israel always wants a perpetual war. But Donald Trump and our military know that, which is why we got involved when we got involved. Let me read this to you real quick. Not quick. We're going to take some time on this. I should stop saying that. I should stop saying quickly. This matters, and it requires thinking, because like I said just a second ago, when it comes to things like this, in conflicts like this, or particular battles within a much larger war, thinking is in short supply. And this is what a lot of these meme makers and these people screaming and shouting online don't understand. Now, with this said here in just a second, let me give you a kind of a prime example of even that behavior. Everybody's now well aware of the Marine who got his arm broken, the door jam, during a Senate hearing. And I think Senator Shaheen from whatever the hell, Montana or wherever he's from, ran in and, started pushing the dude, and his arm broke. That was remarkably unfortunate and incredibly terrible. And again, what the Marine was yelling at the top of his lungs about no more wars for Israel, he's right. The problem is that even he is wrong, because in his emotional outburst, he's not thinking about the fact that there might be something else going on here that is out of the realm of anything that he can possibly conceive. He doesn't want to think about it because he just doesn't know. So he emotionally reacts. He dresses up in his uniform. He goes to a hearing. He stands up and he starts shouting, "No more wars for Israel." Again, I agree with that. I don't think anybody disagrees, other than, of course, the brainwashed individuals in Washington who, get on their knees and suck off Israel all of the time, which is beyond terrible. But again, he had a point. He's just emotionally misguided. He doesn't understand the larger play here. Again, this is not checkers, it's chess. And it's always going to be, because that's the way, again, that psychological operations and certainly military operations operate. Let me read this particular post from Trump from the other day. And then I want to get into a description of what these particular entities actually mean. He said the following on Truth. He said, quote, "Effective immediately, I have ordered the United States Development Finance Corporation, DFC, to provide a very reasonable price, political risk, insurance, and guarantees for the financial security of all maritime trade, especially energy, traveling through the Gulf. This will be available to all shipping lines. If necessary, the United States Navy will begin escorting tankers through the Straits of Hormuz as soon as possible. No matter what, the United States will ensure the free flow of energy to the world." That's all in bold letters. Free flow of energy to the world. Free flow energy world. All bold. The United States' economic and military might is the greatest on earth. More actions to come. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. Then there's this post below it, which again was from the same individual poster on greatawakening.win. They said the following: "The DFC, which again is the Developmental Finance Corporation, is now in a position comparable to Lloyd's of London." Here's what Lloyd's of London is. Lloyd's of London is commonly just called Lloyd's, and it's not a traditional insurance company. Instead, it's the world's leading insurance and reinsurance marketplace based in London, England. It operates as a unique platform where multiple insurers, underwriters, and syndicates come together to underwrite or take on risks and issue policies, especially for complex, large-scale, or specialist insurance needs that regular insurers might not handle alone. More specifically, it's famous for insuring unusual or high-profile things over the years, from celebrity body parts to major oil rigs, satellites, and even large maritime or war risk exposures. It's insurance on war. It's insurance on battle damage. It's insurance on everything that could be destroyed within a conflict. Therefore, if you lose it, it doesn't disrupt any supply chain. It doesn't disrupt any market. It doesn't disrupt the actual product itself, let alone the people who invested in the product. That's something that's never happened before. It didn't happen during Operation quote-unquote Iraqi Freedom. All hell broke loose. With all of that, prices went through the roof for a large amount of time. It completely rewrote the economic structure of our country and a million other things. But here's what the poster continued to say. They said, number one, Lloyd's, the insurance company, used to enjoy an intel pipeline straight from the horse's mouth, quote unquote. MI6 is basically a stone's throw from their head offices. With the Five Eyes network effectively dark when America wants it to be, that horse is basically lame now. Without info, Lloyd's can't provide a standard of cover that an insurer with better info could do in times of war. They said number three, DFC now comes in. Unlike Lloyd's, DFC is a sort of a quasi-public-private beast by design. It was created to give a leg up to developing countries via the U.S. government using private capital. Now there is a mandate from Trump to also provide insurance to all the boats impacted by fighting in the Strait of Hormuz. Lloyd's can't really do this while the UK and Five Eyes is dark in the info war. So Trump is now not only doing with a single war, he's also, it says, curb stomped a dangerous threat to global peace, stop those who know how many dirty bombs going off, fucking Chinese oil supply lines, stripping Russia of its quote-unquote allies, showing how limp-wristed international systems are against real power and curtailing it. He is also now cornering the international shipping political insurance market. Everyone jacked up their price or removed cover in Iran and its surroundings. The DFC steps in and saves the economic growth and livelihood of trade in one move. He wraps up here and says, Trump isn't a genius. He is something so far beyond such a word now that idiot savants look like glue-sniffing meth heads to him. His brain alone has reached Chuck Norris levels of awesome, unquote. He's making sure, and he's also, I should say even this, he's showing individuals that real war is catastrophic to everybody and that it isn't necessary. And so the only way to stop that, of course, is to have insurance on, of course, the loss of anything, but also as if to say, if you damage us, you're going to be the ones that lose money, not us. And then at the same time, he's still going to allow for stability among these particular nations again, so that they continue to operate normally throughout this brief conflict, of which, again, I don't expect to last longer than 60 or 90 days. And no, it's not, 2 weeks to flatten the curve. It's not that. That was a different psychological war altogether for reasons I've been over on the show. That was a horrible plan that, again, had to stretch itself out the way that it did to exhaust the enemy. That's what this is doing too. This is a game of telephone, and the people on the other end of the line are being killed, and the lines are being cut. That way, a John Kerry, a Valerie Jarrett, a John Brennan, a Barack Obama, you can pick a deep state player who tried to overthrow our own government, with, of course, the help of other foreign governments. But if they don't have anybody to answer the phone when they seek to dial it, then they're on an island all by themselves with nowhere to go. They're like a chicken with their head cut off, which is exactly why you're not seeing many of them anymore, are you? When was the last time you saw Barack Obama? Now watch, I'll say that now and then he'll, give a speech or make a post or whatever. But even so, you haven't seen him in quite some time. Same thing with John Kerry. Now, unfortunately, John Brennan, and I played the full 7-minute video in the last war video on Wednesday night, but John Brennan was on MSNBC Now, or whatever they call their channel, and he was on there basically saying again that what Trump is doing in Iran is a bad idea. Look at that at face value. If John Brennan is saying that what Trump is doing in Iran is a bad idea, then it's probably a good idea. It's not complicated. John Brennan's the enemy. And if he's saying, again, it's bad, that means John Brennan's fingerprints are all over what was going on in Iran, which means he's shitting his pants. John Brennan, by the way, is Muslim. He speaks the language. And he's white. He's a traitor like cubed. I mean, he's a traitor times 3 times a gazillion. He can't even get his religions correct. See, you're never going to get this kind of information. I mean, you'll never get it in the mainstream media. You just won't. And you're not even going to get it again on a lot of these shows that are, have, like I said at the top of the show here, dug their feet in the, in concrete and basically said, well, this is the stance I'm taking and I'm not budging because I don't want to think, excuse me. And, this is just the way that it is, and I'm going to make more memes about it because I have it all figured out. I mean, again, God bless Clayton Morris and his wife over there at Redacted and all these other shows and XYZ and, Tucker Carlson and everything else, but they don't have it all the way figured out either. So, what do they do then? They say what they say emotionally. I hope this isn't another war for Israel, and why are we fighting Israel's wars and blah, blah, blah. It's not Israel's war. We are at war, and our enemy, the hidden enemy, is in fact Israel. But it's not so hidden anymore, is it? People already know this, which means the way that you neuter Israel, as I've said before on the show, is you cut off their supply lines also. You cut off their communication routes also. They're a difficult snake to destroy because there are many heads to that snake that are alive and well in our own country, and we know that. But you have to keep in mind that these voices, the Alex Joneses, the Nick Fuenteses of the world, and all these other people, these are also people who were very quick to criticize the Q posts, not pay attention to them, not care, disregard them, and they did so because they still wanted people to listen to their show, and they didn't want anybody to believe that the American people were being woken up by our own military in a positive psychological operation to wake them up to the horrors and connections that all of these criminal deep state players in all these countries and intelligence agencies have with one another against not only us, but their own people within their own countries. The UK, the Middle East, even within Israel. There's people in the country of Israel who, again, are abused by their own government, and even they are Jewish. Let me read you this post. And this is from somebody, again, who has been involved in the Q movement and the Q post since the beginning. It's, I believe, he was rather a psychiatrist in Australia. Dr. Russell McGregor is his name. And he was deplatformed, of course, and I believe lost his medical license as a result, again, of commenting on Q posts, and specifically, of course, the COVID lie, but very specifically Q posts. And he, too, has been analyzing a great deal of this over the course of time. And this particular X post that he makes, which I reposted on my account, is accurate. Here's what he said, and he said this on, let me give you the date here. He said this on March 5th at 7:11 in the morning. He said the following, quote, "President Trump is permanently fixing the Middle East. To understand how he is moving his piece into checkmate, we first need to conceptualize the final position. The end game is straightforward. A united Middle East governed by a peace council comprising all member states overseen by the great powers, America, Russia, and China. These states will not be fully demilitarized, but will form a stable, cohesive, long-term partnership." So how does Israel fit into this? Good question. I'll get to that. He says the critical pivot is Iran. Iran has long been a destabilizing force in the region, but the reasons are complex. In short, Iran has faced an aggressive adversary in Israel, which has historically sought to eliminate it. As a result, Iran has armed itself in self-defense, a stance its people have rightly supported. However, the pressures on Iran have been multifaceted. Most notably, powerful financial interests such as the Rothschilds in the City of London have infiltrated and cornered Iran. The deep state strategy is simple. Maintain a divided Middle East with perpetual conflict, allowing Israel to expand toward a greater Israel, quote-unquote, stretching from the Nile to the Euphrates. Iranian elites fell for these deep state British tactics, funding financial and counterproductive policies, especially through proxies. Again, people that they put up to be the leader or head of an organization or a military or the country, not knowing that those individuals are bought off and controlled. It says the deep state control mechanisms included Freemasonry, MI6 assets, petrodollar flows into British banks, money laundering, blackmail, cronyism, and economic and media warfare. At the same time, the deep state inflamed Israeli aggression and encouraged violent expansionism. This toxic mix created a volatile region incapable of negotiating peace. That was until the American people wisely elected a patriot. This changed everything. President Trump forced alliances with Putin and Xi, enabling historic moves. The British Zionist/Masonic establishment has been outmaneuvered. The current war is theater. Israelis believe that they will eliminate all opposition and force their way to Greater Israel. They have eagerly boarded the war train. What they don't realize is that President Trump secured Israel's submission years ago. This is all a carefully staged show, quote unquote. The bombing of seemingly neutral Middle Eastern states is building a unified narrative. Former enemies are now aligned in demanding an end to Iranian destabilization. Here's where it gets interesting. Putin has long been respected by Iranian leadership and has convinced them that their current path must end for the new paradigm to succeed. They have quietly exited the stage. The United States military has already selected the transition team to shift Iran from an aggressive theocracy to a neutral participant in peace. All Middle Eastern members of this new council will collaborate with America to neutralize threats to Israel. As a result, Israel will no longer be able to attack others. That's a big point right there. It will gain lasting peace and security, but forfeit the Rothschild-backed Greater Israel Project forever. America will no longer need to supply weapons and aid to Israel. The region will handle its own security. All the current fireworks are necessary theater to execute the plan. There will be a partial regime change, it says, in Iran, led by its own people and military transitioning to a nation that embraces multipolar principles. Deep state Rothschild-aligned countries are furious. Britain, Canada, and Australia are apoplectic. A fake war culminating in genuine peace is the last thing they want. It's funny to watch. This is how President Trump will permanently fix the Middle East. Working backward, the path becomes clear. All of this will be achieved by Easter. Finally, the blockade allows financial changes that will decapitate the Rothschilds' empire. And then they end it there. And then they highlight Q Post 4311 on May 24th of 2020, where it's a picture and it shows John Kerry conducting an Obama shadow presidency in Paris by negotiating with Iranians. And it's, again, a picture of John Kerry walking away from some meeting, again, that he had specifically with some Iranian individual, who at the time, again, was not named, I don't believe. But the Q Post simply has a picture of the two of them in separate areas, and it says, "Welcome to the shadow presidency of Barack Hussein Obama, Q," unquote. Again, I suppose we can think about it, and we can think about things like that, or we can just go back to making, very low-level, one-dimension memes, just yelling at one another. Again, there's an X and Gab account that goes by the name Apolitical. And they put out, again, all of this anti-Israel stuff, and rightfully so, and anti-Jew stuff, and rightfully so. But they made a post a couple of days ago, and they basically said, pay attention to everybody on the right who you claim to be friends with, who supports this particular war, this particular conflict in Iran, because that person is your enemy. So there are so many people confused on the right side of things, politically speaking, that they're actually advocating for you as Americans to divide yourself among your own. That's arguably the dumbest thing that a person can do. Because all he's doing, if it's a he, all he's doing, which I assume it is, all they're doing is showing their ignorance. They're just showing their inability to think. They're just emotionally reacting. I'm angry, I'm going to make a post, and that's all anybody needs to know. I have it all figured out, so shut the hell up if you disagree. And by the way, if you disagree, you're a traitor and you don't care about America. That's ridiculous. That shows no thinking whatsoever. It's amygdala action. small brain, emotional nonsense. This is complicated, but it's something, again, that's been going on for, again, a very long time. Many, many years, 40, 50 plus years, give or take. And yes, Israel is behind a great deal of it, but so is our government and previous administrations. Again, why do you think USAID was taken down? They were a massive supply line to all of this. Your tax dollars, mine, everybody's, were all being used to fund all of these wars. And then have a media on a TV that you pay for tell you in the confines of your own home a lie to get you to believe it. And people believe it. While using, again, the mainstream media to disseminate those messages, and they're not true. Even this conflict has the mainstream media confused, and rightfully so. But they're script readers also. They're following a script too. And they're confused. They don't know what the hell to make of any of this, really. You have the left going, this is a mistake. You have the right going, well, this is pretty interesting, but, and then they stop thinking about it because they don't want to examine it any further. The same mainstream media that openly participated in ignoring Q drops and the American people waking up to the levels of corruption within our own country and across the world. What are they going to do? Admit to that now? You think Fox News is just going to roll over and be like, hey, America, sorry, we've been lying to you about everything? It's not going to happen. They're not going to do that. They're exposing themselves. And there's serious warfare taking place here. Let me read you this post real quick. This is from Data Republican on March 4th on X. They said the following, quote, tonight, at Representative Luna, Anna Paulina Luna, not her real name, but that's okay, invited me on a TPUSA gathering here in D.C. involving almost 80 countries. She charged me with meeting with as many different countries' representatives as possible and understanding their foreign influence in NGO situation. And the takeaway is, whatever we're experiencing in America right now, we have long been inflicting in other countries for decades. Mention Soros, quote unquote, even once, and government officials instantly share everything. Our fight isn't for our country, it's for the entire world, unquote. That's what the Iranian battle is about. It's a battle in a war that has been going on since the escalator to end all wars. Because without doing this to end all wars, you would have perpetual wars in a constant cycle, just like we've had, certainly if you've been alive, well, hell, since it doesn't matter what generation, pick one. It's just unfortunate that in moments like this, people have amnesia. And then, of course, like I said, they get over-emotional, and they don't connect any dots, and they don't examine anything. This is the time to not dig your feet into the ground and say, oh, I'm certain this is happening and this is the way. Again, you don't have to believe anything that I'm saying. I'm just asking people to think and understand that there's a bigger play here. Let me play this clip now. And again, this is from Fox News, and this was from Jesse Waters' show where he had Peter Schweitzer on. And they're talking specifically again about what's going on in Iran and its connections to China. And Peter Schweitzer is right. Schweitzer again wrote the book about Clinton Cash. He wrote the book about Barack Obama and the deep state and how they were moving money throughout all of these countries, including Israel. And they were doing all of this and have been doing all of this for quite some time. Very famously, again, he laid it all out. Follow the money. He's one of the follow the money guys. Listen to what he says regarding all of this and its impact on China, certainly in the eyes of everybody over there in the Middle East, because China is one of these countries that's being put on an island now when it comes to actual products, military equipment, certainly economic structures and everything else. And they're not going to be relied on very much in the future, which means we are. That's not a bad move either. That's America first, and frankly, That's as America first as it gets. Give this a listen in 3, 2, 1.
They're in a panic, Jesse. I mean, look, anytime you have these kinds of military operations that are taking place, they have ripple effects. These ripples are actually tidal waves in China. Think about it. Over the last 58 days, between what happened in Venezuela and what started happening in Iran, China has lost two of its most important allies in the developing world. They were big energy suppliers, about 20 to 25% of their energy. But China was able to buy that energy on the cheap because they were sanctioned companies. They were paying $15 a barrel less than anybody else was. And by the way, they weren't paying in US dollars. They were paying in the Chinese currency. And that has been a long-term objective of China to move away from a dollar-based economy. That is all gone. But it's having effects that we don't even fully appreciate, Jesse. Look at the AI race. You think, what does this have to do with AI? Well, two of the biggest AI contractors in China are Huawei and ZTE. These are big telecom infrastructure companies. They're vital to China's AI capabilities. They both have huge contracts in Venezuela and Iran for which they are now not going to be paid. And you know, we're talking about tens of billions of dollars in contracts of revenue that they were expecting to get that they weren't getting. They were doing a lot of AI testing in these countries. So the ramifications are enormous, and Donald Trump has really shifted the equation with China within a matter of less than 2 months.
And we're testing our AI in real time under extremely dangerous conditions. So we're getting even more intelligence than they would ever get tinkering around on a computer. The fact that now we control anything that ships out of that strait, so much oil flows out of that strait to the whole world. The fact that we now control it, what does that do to China?
It now means we have a chokehold on the strait. Look, assume that China wanted to move on Taiwan, right? There's a military response, but now we have a massive energy response, which is we simply don't allow any tankers to ship oil from the Persian Gulf through the Strait of Hormuz. We can do it. It might have been a little bit dicey had we not taken out the Iranians. That's roughly half of their oil. 40 to 50% of their oil is now suddenly not available to them. So those are enormous methodologies. And look at what happens in terms of military technology, Jesse. China provided their most advanced air defense capabilities to Iran. We completely destroyed them. They didn't shoot down one American or Israeli plane. This is reminiscent of 1982 when the Israelis flying F-15s went up against the Syrians flying MiGs, and the Israelis beat them 81 aircraft to 0. What happened after that? They couldn't give the MiGs away. So China now has the problem that their military technology is not recognized as being up to par to the United States. That's going to have huge implications with a whole host of other countries.
Right. So they lose a bunch of customers and they lose face. Now that the United States, if this mission is successful, now we have no idea how this is going to play out. We're praying it works out. If it's successful, what kind of position does that put the United States of America with Venezuela and now Iran more in our orbit?
Well, it means that a lot of countries in the developing world that might have been flirting with China don't want to flirt with them anymore because they realize that China can sign all the quote-unquote strategic partnerships they want, but they're not going to do anything about it if their allies get in trouble. I mean, all China's done is send some scolding messages. They haven't done a single thing to stand up for their allies. Second of all, they understand that this administration is the partner that they want to be in business with, not Beijing.
It goes back to the first time that Trump took the Middle East tour during his first administration. That entire tour that he took was on purpose. It was to meet with all of them and to show them all that he's in charge and that they're bending the knee, so to speak, because we have a better idea as to what's going to happen here in the future, and you would do well to be partners with us. And they went, that sounds awesome, let's do it. Then they started killing their own deep states over there. But not Iran. They were one of the last holdouts because, again, they were being funded by Israel and they were being funded by our tax dollars. Then, of course, very famously last summer, Donald Trump makes the tour over in the Middle East all over again. He hits all of those countries, shakes the hands with all of those leaders, and he says it's go time. And here we are. This is military planning at its finest, and it is designed to end all wars. That is the point. I saw a post the other day, and somebody said, I voted for Trump because he said that he was going to expose the pedophiles and end wars. And he's not doing that. And I thought to myself, you have to be on drugs. That's exactly what he's doing. He's exposing pedophiles and all of their connections and their trafficking lines and their money lines and their communication lines and all of it. And he's engaging in a battle to end all wars. But people just look at things one-dimensionally and they say, no one's been arrested for pedophilia and we're dropping bombs. That's the opposite of what I voted for. If you voted for the exposure of pedophiles, then why in the hell is the DOJ releasing any Epstein files, and why have they been doing that? Why have endless people been writing about it? Why are endless people killing themselves as a result of being exposed in those files and being fired from their positions? Why are legal depositions taking place with the Clintons and now upcoming Howard Lutnick and Pam Bondi? Why is it that some Epstein files still haven't been released? Simple, because they're the worst ones that exist. They're the ones that show the most heinous shit and name the most names. And yes, this is a battle in the Middle East to end all wars because Israel has always been poking the bear. They're the ones that do it. They pay all these other organizations, CIA, MI6, their own Mossad, to go into these countries and to stir up trouble. Not anymore. If you kill the person on the other end of the telephone, the bad guy who picks up the telephone to call the person in a foreign country to, again, stir up chaos, if that person's dead on the other end of the line, then the game is over. And that's what's going on. The game of telephone is being cut off. The financial supply chains are being cut off. And people are pissed. The bad guys are pissed off. But that's because we're winning. And no, I should say this about our own politicians. It doesn't mean that we need our own politicians' participation. Isn't it obvious that the executive branch is fighting the legislative branch on a constant basis? And vice versa? Trump hates the legislative branch. He can't stand it. These people are the dumbest humans on the face of the planet. They're terrible. Case in point, Nancy Mace's motion to expose all of the, whatever it was, sexual payouts or sexual harassment claims, I believe it was, and complaints that have been made, again, against members of Congress, that failed in a massive vote. Like 300 some odd to 60 some odd, 300 some odd plus people said, no, we don't want to release that. That means those people have something to hide. But that was done on purpose. That's an exposure operation. It's designed to show the American people that the vast majority of Congress has paid out people to settle sexual harassment claims or sexual abuse claims. That's a big, big deal. No wonder American schools are in shambles when it comes to Title IX investigations and sexual harassment and sexual assault. It occurs in the halls of Washington, D.C. Does that surprise anybody? It shouldn't. It was a perfect Zootsfing move. You make them make a vote that they don't want to make. If they make it and the information gets exposed, then they look terrible. If they don't pass it and vote to not pass it, to not release the information, they look terrible. It's lose-lose because they've already lost. There was also this Supreme Court decision, again, that was unanimous, which is shocking, but it essentially said that immigration judges are the ones who are allowed to make decisions based on immigration policy and deportations. And again, what constitutes a deportation and any illegal behavior among illegal aliens themselves, not lower courts and lower judges. That's a good thing. That's a win for America. That's a win for Trump's administration, without a doubt. And again, it was a 9-0 decision, which is good. Because basically you're backing the judges into a corner, specifically the Supreme Court, by essentially saying, aren't certain judges supposed to do very specific things based on their judicial oversight over specific subjects? And of course, the Supreme Court, being the highest court in the land, would have to say, yes, these kinds of judges are only supposed to be doing these kinds of things. Those kinds of judges are supposed to do those kinds of things. They're not supposed to cross-pollinate. That's why they said 9-0, because that's correct. That's the way it's supposed to be. So again, that was a very good victory. That's a good thing. But it doesn't mean, again, that these branches of our own government are not engaging in a civil war. They most certainly are. Everybody's jockeying for position. But just keep in mind who's in charge of the executive branch and the power of the executive. It's Donald Trump and the military. And this has been a very long operation that's been going on for a very long time to root out the swamp, expose them for who they are, get the American people to wake up, get them to understand how government operates. And of course, you're seeing it, and everybody's seeing it. If Trump weren't one of the good guys, then we wouldn't be experiencing any of this. We wouldn't even know about any of this. The DOJ would be prosecuting civilians more so than they already are, but none of this information would be coming out the way that it's coming out. This is all because of executive action. And praise God for it, because it's important and it has to happen. Doesn't mean there aren't going to be casualties along the way. Doesn't mean there aren't going to be disappointments along the way. There are, because there always are. The swamp is deep after all, and it's not going to go away. But people have to educate themselves about what's really going on in the world, put emotion to the side, and again, start to objectively analyze this information. And you can start to see through it. So, with that said, let me move on to education now. I've got 2 stories, and then I want to end with a funny one. And it's one of the funniest things I've read in a long time. And it's gonna be difficult to not laugh throughout it. I've read it once, and I don't know, I found it very humorous to say the least. But this particular story is not funny, assuming that this can be taken at face value and this itself isn't some kind of a false flag or a psychological operation in itself. Do you recall the Georgia school shooting with the kid who apparently, again, packed whatever it was, a rifle in his bag, an AR-15 style rifle in his bag, and it was sticking out of his bag, and he was claiming, again, that it was, whatever, a wrapped-up poster for a project or something like that. Then he entered his school, and then he shot students. The exact number has slipped my mind, but either way, they also, very quickly after that, they arrested the father. Again, he was a single parent, and he seemed rather put together. I mean, he didn't seem like he was a psychopath by any stretch, but they arrested the father. And again, the video badge cam footage of all of that was widely available when they were first talking with the father. But they arrested him, they tried him, and he was found guilty and convicted of second-degree murder and involuntary manslaughter. The father was. And he had nothing to do with it. Again, this is in Georgia. Colin Gray, the father of accused Appalachia High School mass shooter Colt Gray, has been found guilty in a jury in Barrow County. Again, it just seems strange to me. I almost don't believe it because it feels too much like a show trial to some extent. It says prosecutors successfully argued that Gray provided his son with the AR-15 style rifle used in the attack as a Christmas gift, continued buying him ammunition despite being aware of his mental health deterioration and prior school shooting threats investigated by law enforcement. Prosecutors told jurors that despite those concerns, Gray did not pursue inpatient treatment for his son. Colt Gray, who was 14 at the time of the shooting, was indicted on 55 counts, including murder. He has pleaded not guilty, and a judge has set a status hearing for his case for mid-March. He's accused of killing, two 14-year-old students, Mason Schumerhorn and Christian Angulo, if I'm saying that right, and two teachers, Richard Aspinwall, 39, and Christina Ermy, 53. He will be sentenced at a later date. Again, was it a real trial? I wasn't there, I don't know. It just seems beyond strange to me, but then again, he's white. And it's a white family in Georgia. They wouldn't do this for a black couple or a black parent in Georgia, because if that were the case, they'd be locking them all up, would they not? Certainly in the Atlanta area, among others. But they're not going after parents of black children who kill other blacks. So this is, again, part of the Civil War, because there's a race war. And weaponizing the judicial system in that race war is part of that war and part of this war. They want everybody unarmed. And by they, of course, I mean the ADL, Democrats, the left, communists, Bolsheviks, all of them. Even the rhinos who were bought off and blackmailed on the right. They want Americans scared to own a gun. This could happen to you. Your child could take your gun, or your gift that you gave your child could be used in a murder, and then you will go to jail. But not if they're black. Just keep that in mind. Ethan Crumbley, white. Colt Gray, white. Both of them did it. Those were real school shootings by all accounts. But the outcome against their parents is completely outrageous. Now let me mention this. A friend and a listener to the show sent me this, and this is from a local school district here in Butler County. And this, again, should show people the state of affairs from a financial standpoint and how these schools are in deep, deep trouble. This is what happens when you overspend. And, of course, population decline is a part of how schools get their money or don't get their money in this particular case. This is from the Southwest Ohio Tri-State, or Tri-County rather, newspaper outlet, the Journal News, and it was titled, Edgewood City School District Prepares for Funding Hit. Falling Enrollment. Quote, it's a Hail Mary, unquote. Edgewood City School District has announced a plan to address a looming funding shortfall and steady enrollment decline. Their superintendent, Curtis Philpott, said in a statement Thursday recent changes to the state's funding formula through property tax reform legislation combined with local tax rollbacks will negatively impact Edgewood City schools dramatically beginning next year. And they're not the only one. It's every school district, which is again why they're shooting for the moon with levies. And they don't seem to think that the property tax abolishment, which is going to be on the ballot this coming November, is going to pass, which means they're going to be in deep, deep shit. It says at the same time, enrollment continues to fall, and the district has 500 fewer students than it did 6 years ago, and another 500 student decrease is projected by 2030. Quote unquote, fewer students results in less state funding, he said. Well, of course it does. He attributed the decline to smaller family sizes and increased educational options, including homeschooling, open enrollment, charter and private schools, and expanding programs at Butler Tech. While budget cuts may seem like an obvious solution, Philpott said that the district has already averaged more than $1 million in reductions each of the past 3 years. Quote, we've done the best we can to make cuts, just keep our heads above water. But with these recent changes, there's no way we can keep our head above water, Philpott told Journal News. We're in trouble. Any future cuts would no longer be small strategic adjustments, Philpott said, but sweeping reductions could include program eliminations, moving to state minimums for instruction and transportation, cutting staff, ending extracurricular activities, and closing buildings. Thank God. Thank God. Because that's what's supposed to happen. That's what's supposed to happen. That's what education is supposed to be. Think of a one-room schoolhouse. Did they have school buses and archery club and fencing club and a hockey team and debate team and blah, 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 blah? No, they didn't. They had reading, writing, and arithmetic from competent instructors for small amounts of students across numerous age ranges, and they were smarter for it. This is difficult for these brainwashed people to understand. That if we want to get education back to what it could be in this nation, you have to cut the riffraff. You have to get rid of it. It goes on, it says, because of this, he said, Edgewood City School District Board of Education has adopted a plan to give the community the best version of Edgewood. The plan includes launching a Jumpstart summer program for grades K through 8, reinvesting in the district's virtual academy, there you go, expanding preschool offerings, returning Edgewood Early Childhood Center and Edgewood Primary School to neighborhood preschool grade 2 buildings. Again, preschool isn't going to solve the problem, certainly not a financial problem, but they think that it does because they enroll them in preschool and then, of course, they get more money from the children and the parents for a longer period of time. Anyway, he goes on and says, our approach is not to continue to make cuts because ultimately we're going to have to rely on community or a bailout from the government. He means a levy. So don't vote for it. That should be a no-brainer. He says, our feeling is let's try to give the community something that they like and see as worth saving. Doesn't make sense. We just have to improve our product and we have a short window to do it, he said. He said the district will also review participation fees to determine whether the current structure creates barriers for families. If reduced fees boost student involvement, he said, overall revenue could remain stable while participation increases. Not likely. You raise the cost of things, people will say, nope, we can't do that, we don't want to do it, and we'll keep our money. Keep in mind, paying to play a sport is a tax, and taxation is theft. I thought public school was supposed to be free, but it's not. In fact, it's more expensive than sending your child to a private school or just homeschooling them and using a homeschooling curriculum, like a Becca. It wraps up here. It says, in recent years, the district has left 3 positions unfilled to save money, with existing staff absorbing those responsibilities. That approach has stretched the team too thin, the superintendent said. A revised administration structure proposes 2 directors overseeing district operations. The district has also hired a supplemental website and social media content manager. To pay for these expansions and positions, Philpott, the superintendent, said that the district will rely on cash reserves for the next few years. How long is it going to last before we end up on the ballot, he said? We may be on the ballot next year. We may be on the ballot the following year, he said. We're going to do the best job that we can for as long as we can before we run out of money. Well, don't run out of money then. Make the cuts now. Consolidate your buildings now. Sell off your property and stop overspending. It's not tough. But again, when the whole levy thing starts up and that conversation begins, that's when all the scare tactics come out. Your property values are going to drop because our school isn't going to be as enticing for outsiders to want to come in here, and all those other lies they'll tell you. My kid needs art class. What are they going to do without art class? They need a gym teacher. What are they going to do without physical education? Because, well, it just makes everything better for them throughout the course of the day. And all these other lies, all these stories that get told. All these things that don't correlate with one another. If my kid didn't have band, he wouldn't do well in math class. Give me a break. Cut music. Want to play an instrument? Get on YouTube at home and rent a violin. It's not tough. Go to the music store, rent an instrument. Hell, 9 out of 10 kids start playing an instrument and stop within 6 months. And that's because the school system beats it out of them. The school system makes playing the instrument not interesting. If they just did it at home, watching YouTube instruction, they would learn the instrument faster, just like foreign language. If they learned it at home on YouTube, they'd learn it faster. But they don't. It's this reliance on government indoctrination that has all of these people by the throat. So much so that they'll tax themselves into oblivion. And that's a certain kind of stupid right there. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to end with this one. This is funny. This came from the Daily Caller, and it was titled, let me get a date for you on this. This was March 4th, this week. This is funny. This is really good. This guy, this particular school teacher should win Teacher of the Year just for his creativity, but it clearly also shows he's at the end of his rope. And he's got to find a little fun in his monotonous job, because if he doesn't find a little fun, he'll kill himself. It was titled the following: Math teacher put on indefinite leave as fat-shaming algebra quiz investigated. Bear with me on this one. It's hilarious, and it's short. A San Francisco math teacher was placed on indefinite leave Monday after being accused of using sexist and fat-shaming questions on a quiz. Tom Chan, Asian American man, God bless him, a Lowell High School math teacher, for more than 20 years assigned quiz questions about dating costs based on a girl's weight, or quote-unquote sexy points, along with others involving a fat kid, quote-unquote, and candy. The San Francisco Chronicle reported. Lowell High School principal Jan Batista notified parents Monday that Chan, quote, needed to go on leave without explaining the reason or how long the leave would last. That parental notification came just hours after the Chronicle contacted San Francisco Unified School District. I'm so sorry. Officials for comment on Chan's quiz. It says one parent told the paper that some families were hesitant to report Chan for fear of retaliation against students. Director of Communication Laura Dundnick, yikes, told SF Gate the district is aware of complaints about the quiz. Quote, we take these concerns seriously and are actively investigating. She told the outlet in an emailed statement, declining to add more details on a personal matter, quote unquote. One question cited by the Chronicle used a woman's weight as its premise. Quote, the amount of money you spend on a date varies inversely to how much they weigh, unquote, it said. Quote, a typical girl that weighs 120 pounds will cost you $55, unquote. Follow-up questions asked students to calculate the cost of a date with a 220-pound girl named Ashley, and how much a date could weigh if a student could only afford $5. The prompt also asked students what the date's name would be. Again, this is a guy just trying to have some fun at the end of his rope. There's no doubt about it. I mean, hell, he's a math teacher. He's an Asian math teacher in San Francisco. You just assume they're suicidal, don't you? He says another section of the quiz obtained by the Chronicle was titled, quote, Mr. Chan versus the Fat Kid Part 2, unquote, in which Chan allegedly wrote, quote, the fat kid from last time wouldn't be quiet about the candy I was eating in front of him, so I punted him into the air, unquote. The follow-up question required students to solve problems related to height and time, and asked students to share the last time they, quote, gave candy to a fat kid, unquote. Oh, God. He's having way too much fun. Chan also offered students extra credit for performing elaborate dance routines, which he posted on YouTube under the title Grades or Dignity, quote unquote, reported NBC Bay Area. The description of the video says, quote, kids need an A so I provide an out, unquote. The guy's creative. He's having some fun. Former student Ezra Medad and Jaden, no way I get that last name, Grajeda, told NBC Bay Area that they were given similar questions by Chan when in his class, but believed he was simply trying to make the questions engaging and fun for his students. Quote, he helped us a lot and helped us understand it. Medad told NBC Bay Area, quote, compared to other teachers that are so fast-paced, like when you ask a question, he'd go into depth about it, unquote. The teenager of the concerned parent, who was told the San Francisco Chronicle about the questions, said Chan, is relatively well-liked by his students. The teenager thought Chan's questions were similar to bad dad jokes, according to the Chronicle. Batista and SFUSD Labor Relations Division did not immediately respond to the Daily Caller News Foundation's request for comment, unquote. Congratulations. Good for him. That sounds like a fun math class in what would otherwise be a rather monotonous subject in probably a terrible learning environment. But he sounded like one of the good ones and he was having a little fun with the questions. Good for him. But that's all it takes, ladies and gentlemen. All it takes is one sensitive kid and one sensitive parent, and somebody loses their job. People don't have senses of humor anymore. It's really, really disturbing. Anyway, with that said, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for listening this week. Have a great weekend, and I'll catch you on Monday. Peace. Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.